Hi. So I will be talking about the images we are releasing today of Saturn's hexagon, and we are looking at Saturn from Cassini spacecraft's vantage point, which is in orbit around Saturn since 2004. So I have been studying this feature called the hexagon around North Pole of Saturn. The feature is not new. Just to be sure, we've known that it existed since at least since '81. And we confirmed that as soon as Cassini went into orbit around Saturn, it was still active in 2004. I think we're still waiting for the image. So we are in orbit around Saturn. The images we're releasing today, let's see, the image that just showed up is how Saturn's north polar area looks like from orbit of Saturn. So right in the middle is North Pole of Saturn, the darker spot, and then you can see the clear geometric hexagon, geometric shape, which has 6 sides and corners. That's why we've been calling it the hexagon.
Saturn also has something very unusual. It has a hurricane at its north pole, but that hurricane has a hexagon shape. So rotating at about 77 degrees north latitude is a 6-sided hexagon. Why it keeps those straight sides, we really have no good idea.
Put anything on our website having to do with the hexagon, the hits go through the roof. People just can't get their head around things with straight sides in an atmosphere, and they think this is, I don't know, some kind of crystal energy. I don't really know.
But anyway, there's nothing peculiar about the hexagon. In fact, I've encouraged people not to even call it the hexagon anymore. And you can tell all your friends that too. There's nothing to get weird about.
So my apologies to the New Age people, but you can quit praying to it. And surely one of the most beautiful images that we in my shops, my Cyclops back in Boulder, where we process most of the images that we release to the public, one of the most spectacular ones is this. And it was so beautiful, it was considered so beautiful and made it all the way to the nightly news. Brian Williams talked it up.
Here's the hexagon. This was early on in 2006, again with infrared light. They just colored the picture pinkish. When you look closely, you see a regular 6-sided hexagon right around the North Pole. What that?
And there's this gigantic hexagon. It's still there, still whirling around the North Pole. And one of the things that we've also found is that the clouds inside that hexagon also move around at around 300 miles an hour.
So the spacecraft has actually discovered a tremendous amount about Saturn, understanding the magnetic fields of Saturn, understanding what the atmosphere is like, and particularly looking at the really dynamic atmosphere of Saturn, where all kinds of really great things have been discovered. So for example, did you know that Saturn is a planet that has its own aurora? You may not have known that, but yes it does. Right at the north and the south poles it has auroral activity that has been photographed in ultraviolet light.
Now somebody was very bright. They said, well guys, yeah, it's 2006, it's dark up there, but just for the heck of it, why don't we turn on the visible light camera too in addition to the infrared? And they did. It doesn't cost any more. Aurora. Here's the hex. Do you see the hex? Here is aurora, just like we have the north and south poles of Earth.
The way the winds work at Saturn, particularly at the poles, you can actually see that there's an interesting hexagonal shape to the clouds right around that polar region. That's extraordinarily unusual and was completely unexpected to be found there.
So I said that the hexagon, or North Pole of Saturn, is a meandering jet. So the meandering property really depends on the details of the jet. So the jet around North Pole has the right speed and width to fit in a wave, basically, to fold into 6-sided shape.
Now we had some idea, of course, how the clouds, as they circulate the planet, might cause various kinds of eddies and disturbances and all kinds of shapes called festoons, which are really clever, interesting little curly-Q shapes that are developed as the clouds are sliding past each other at various velocities.
We're seeing material material actually flowing out and forming rather curious patterns. Here is that high velocity jet, showing somewhat of a Rossby-like structure, Rossby wave-like structure, and associated with it are some cyclonic, that is the equivalent of low pressure areas, in a system that's not altogether different from the Earth. This is...
And then, of course, we have a lot of vortices, but what we do have around Saturn's south pole is a hurricane-like structure that we do have at North Pole. So there are similarities and differences.
We've always thought of Saturn being this serene body up there that it's very lovely. There's a few storms on it, but it looks very like a pearl in the sky with different hues to it due to different types of clouds, but nothing very dramatic. What we're seeing is that if you go through those hazes and get down to the depths of Saturn, you find a roiling atmosphere of all sorts of dynamical features going on, and the cyclone is probably one manifestation of this dramatic dynamics that's going on inside roiling Saturn.
So I think that major objective, once we do the detailed analysis of those storm systems, exactly how rapidly they're rotating, what their speeds are, and relate those to the high-speed jet streams, that we may have a very important piece of the story for the weather system on Saturn.
The sun is rising near the North Pole, the Arctic Circle of Saturn or whatever, and sure enough, several years later, our hexagon is still there. Now, of course, this is dark because light had not gotten all the way up to the North Pole when this picture was taken. I'm sure that this square thing is an artifact in the camera of some sort. We see these in a lot of their pictures. You may have already noticed some notches out.
It's definitely not an illusion of any kind. This is a real feature that does exist, and it has been there since 1981. It is gas, so it's clear. Well, it's a pattern of clouds, so it's gaseous. It's not a solid feature that we have on the surface of Saturn. Saturn is a gas giant planet, so there's no such thing as mountains and valleys or even oceans on Saturn. All we have is a bottomless atmosphere. If you try to land on Saturn, we're just going to sink to the core, basically, of the atmosphere. There's no solid ground we can stand on. But the hexagon is a real feature. It is a jet stream, as I said earlier. It is folded into six-sided shape, and it is a very stable feature. That is a surprising part of it, and we are studying that feature.